where we would be served hot chocolate and the tastiest of Mexican pastries. The orchestra was often invited to play at school banquets which were held at the San Jacinto Inn. We also had many opportunities to play at very, very nice places such as the Grand Ballroom, Crystal Ballroom, or the Rice Hotel. We appreciated the beauty of these places where we went, not to mention the fine food that we were served. But really with these opportunities came the realization to us that life on the other side of the tracks was truly much more beautiful. The school district was most generous in always providing transportation for our trips. Miss Jessie Lee Humphrey, who was the principal of the school, and one of the teachers would usually accompany us on our trips. They were very proud to be identified with us, and we considered them our friends. Many of the orchestra members are no longer with us, and many of us have moved away to the big city. Others are now very, very involved with their children and their grandchildren. But yet, this very strong bond and close ties that developed among us very early in our lives exist to this very day among those of us who still remain. Some of us play for our churches, and we play for our family's special occasions. There's also a group of us that will band together on occasion in response to an invitation to play for some benefit. But I can truthfully say that we all share the fondest of memories that were made possible and made our life beautiful, even at that early age, because a school board cared and because a city responded to us and appreciated our talents. I have two slides that I would like to show you. One is of the orchestra in its earliest stages. You will notice at that time we only had a very small little xylophone. My sister was at the xylophone at that time. Then I have another one of the band, which if you would show us. This is the band as it appears shortly after it was organized. And the photo that you see on the easel is one that was used for promotional purposes during this out-of-state trip which we took.
Well, last but not least, we have Dave Porter, who for 18 years has been the conductor of the Baytown Symphony Orchestra.
Programs, but I thought I do want these back. Brought these out today. I think the first one was 1970. We have the others, but I don't let those out anymore. I don't have enough of them. I'm just going to put these down here and just pass them around while I have a few things to say about them. It seems that the Baytown Symphony Orchestra, at least for this evening, is the youngest group, because I think this will be our 18th year, so I guess we're just a fledgling group that's just barely getting off the ground. At least every year it seems that way. But we're very glad. We feel like we're in very good company, and these other groups have done very well for Baytown. We hope that we can add that small part of our own. A little bit about the organizational system of the Baytown Symphony. This is pretty much contemporary for today. The Baytown Symphony was founded, as I said, 18 years ago in order to provide those of us living in this greater area the opportunity to enjoy a very unique cultural experience in the form of performing with the symphony orchestra or listening and observing the orchestra's seasonal offerings. One of the real purposes of the orchestra is for the performers themselves to have something to play in. Just like Mr. Richardson talked about the drama thing, it's important for a community to have outlets for the community people. Not all the people obviously can play the instrument or sing the song, and we need audiences, good audiences, well-disciplined audiences, and audiences who are very appreciative of what we do. So we also need that into it too. Insofar as possible, the orchestra is composed of musically talented citizens from this area who freely give their time to establish the orchestra's central core. Above and beyond that, the orchestra's talent is supplemented with professional players, usually from the Houston Local 65, that is the musicians. And this is to fill in all those little spots that you haven't filled locally with someone that can play the part well. Because if you have a terrific French horn section of 4 people, but you can only find 3, and you finally find this other person, but they can't play well. The other 3 French horn players say to the conductor, I'm not going to play with you anymore because this jerk over here is messing up the part, or something of that sort. So you have to be very careful with balancing the abilities and the talents of the people to keep everyone happy. If not, you'll lose lots of people. Speaking of the people in the orchestra, over a period of 18 years, with a 70-piece orchestra, not that we would have new people every year, it's about a 30% turnover. With that 30% turnover, I've had the pleasure of working with some statistical number of 9,828 musicians in 18 years. So we do a lot of phone calling, as you can see, and to keep up with people. We have an orchestra board that is 21 volunteer members, and over 18 years that has come to 488 community people who have served on the orchestra at one time or another on the orchestra board. I didn't realize that until today, until I started digging through a few things, and I was very surprised about that. But the orchestra board itself is made up of 21 volunteer members. They're primarily local residents who donate their time and services to help make the orchestra a successful venture. The BSO currently operates with about an $18,500 budget per year. Income comes from 3 sources: program advertising, donor solicitation, and matching grants. Matching grants have come from the recording industry. They have primarily from that, and Exxon, and perhaps U.S. Steel at one time. And the city has been very generous with a grant from time to time to help us get a special program going. Usually the May program, which is usually outside. So this pretty much covers our seasonal operations and takes care of the rental or the purchase of the music. And Lee College is the home of the Baytown Symphony Orchestra. So in fact, our letterhead this year is going to say Lee College, Baytown Symphony Orchestra at Lee College, because we feel that some people don't know where we exist. Sometimes we don't know where we exist, because we play concerts in different locations, not always at Lee College. One can enroll in the orchestra for non-credit through the Office of Continuing Education. The orchestra is an adjunct to the Fine Arts Division, and it rehearses in the facilities of the music department at Lee College, and which being a faculty member of the college, I'm very appreciative of the administration and of the college to help us in pretty much a non-monetary way, but even the lights and everything else that we get to use certainly cost a considerable amount of money. So we're very happy with the way that they help us. Move over to what Dolly Dowell gave me. Dr. Pilot? What I do with Dolly? In the red book. Thank you. Yeah. This year, our season is called the Alzati season. Every year I seem to, at least so far, for 18 years, have been able to come up with a little cute name, usually Italian, and meaning something in music. This one has to do with literally to lift off, like if you take a mute off a string, in Italian it'll say Alzati, to lift the mute off. So this year we're trying to lift up our spirits or lift up our instruments or whatever to have another season. The officers this year are Dolly Dowler, who's here this evening as president. Treasurer is Lowell Westerman. The orchestra representative is Janet Hall. And I'm looking here. Nancy Houston is our new vice president. Amy Curry is our secretary. Mildred Jones is in charge of public relations. And our historian this year is Carolyn Emanuel. We have a volunteer secretary, orchestra librarian, orchestra manager, Ida Miller, Diana Porter, and Jessie McClellan. In addition, we have organized last year an auxiliary to the orchestra, which is just starting to get off the ground. They had some bridge tournaments, was that what they were called? We were talking to this lady here about having another tournament, it looks like. And I appreciate these people's efforts very much. This coming year, our first concert, October the 19th, is going to be at the First Bank. For the last 3 years, we've had a concert at the bank. It's a concert that is one of the reasons to have this concert is we invite a lot of people to come to it by invitation. Those who have given us any money in the last 3 years or something like that. So if you're not given an invitation, it's because we just don't know you. And we can't send out 50,000 invitations because we don't have that much of a budget. But you're certainly welcome to come. And one of the purposes of this concert is to raise money for the year. So it's probably a good place to have the concerts in the bank. And we can just move the money right in. But we're doing, on that concert, just to highlight this, a concerto for 2 violins by Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach. Alan Johnson and Doreen Hanrahan are the violin soloists. They are our principal first and principal second violinists. Also on that concert, the concert ends with Hungarian Rhapsody by Franz Liszt. Also on the concert, it's Swan Lake Suite by Tchaikovsky. Every Christmas time, about that time of the year, early part of Christmas, we have a seasonal concert. It sometimes has been the Nutcracker Suite. More often than not, it's been Handel's Messiah with soloists and so forth. This year, on December the 7th, we're going to mix it up a little bit. We're going to have some music from the oratorio by Handel called Judas Maccabeus, and some solos and a couple choruses, a sing-along, some music by Charles Ives. And Charles Ives was a very contemporary composer who primarily lived as a hermit most of his life. And so the music is not real wild, but it's 3 chorus pieces. One is called Adeste Fixatus, the other is December, and the third is called A Christmas Carol. We're going to do some music from the same song, music from Christmas oratorio, and then some music from Messiah. Considerable amount. It's a fairly long concert. Bring your lunch and your supper and everything, but it's for free. All of our concerts are free, so we hope that you enjoy that one. This concert will involve sort of a volunteer choir. We send out lots of invitations to people that we have worked with in the last 5 or 6 years in a choral way, and say, are you going to sing with us this year or not? If so, be there by such and such, and they have a couple rehearsals with us only, and we put it together very, very fast. So every year that chorus gets larger and larger, and I'm hoping for 300 this year, who knows. In February, our principal trumpet player, Edward Johnson, is going to play the Haydn Trumpet Concerto. And we're going to do a contemporary work by Howard Hanson, his Symphony No. 2. Then in May, we have probably an outside concert. We haven't set exactly where it's going to be yet. I want to do Rossini's overture to La Gazzolata, that's the Phoebe Magpie, and some music from Faust, and I'm not sure what else I'm going to do on that concert. I'd like to go back a little from just present and look at some, just like to list some names for some of you that you might remember some of these people. This is back as far as 1971. Some of these people, obviously, because we have such a different age level, we've had some junior high school kids to some older than junior high school kids, 70. Had Dorothy Stratton, who's deceased now. David Earnhardt, his young man, now lives in another town. His mother and sister, Doris Earnhardt, the Earnhardts were very instrumental in getting the string program started in the Baytown Public Schools. And the Baytown Symphony really had a lot to do with that too, because without the orchestra, there might not have been an interest. Barney Weber, Barney's still around. I think I've seen him recently. Virginia Miller, Lynn Holly, Michael Davis. Some of you might know Mike. I think he works for one of the oil companies now. He used to be an undertaker before he met me, and he decided after playing in the orchestra a couple of years that he would go back to school. And he went back to school and finished a degree in music. He was a band director for a couple of years. He didn't like that either, so now I think he works for one of the oil companies. Dale Martin, Mr. Martin, that works with the BLT a lot. This is one of his sons. I played in the orchestra. Fred Parker, who was a band director here in town, played violin in the orchestra for many years. Mary Wilbanks played flute in the orchestra. Linda Young, the drummer. John Hunt, trombone player. There's Mr. and Mrs. Hunt, his parents back there. Donald Rogers, Sam Lester, Kathy Funderburg. Last time I heard from Kathy, she was the first horn player in the Calgary Orchestra in Canada. And she got a lot of her experience here in Baytown. Lloyd Quisenberry, he's a band director in Pasadena and lives here in town. Kathy Duhan, Barbara Hines, Rennie Rodriguez, Gary Westmoreland, deceased now, Bob Peel. Bob was a tuba player. He's still around. He has a mustache, red mustache, about that long. He used to work for the railroad. Missouri City? Okay. Missouri Pacific. Mark Miggs, David Milligan. David is still a young man and is around. Joe Whitehead, Norris Smith, Deborah Perry. Deborah's one of the managers over at Kroger's. Rusty Hess is a band director now in somewhere in Houston. Jan Fridley, Deborah Rogers, Gary Boswell, Bobby Godby. I think Mrs. Godby's husband was a preacher here in town for a while. Chester Rao owned the music store on Chet's. Cora Turner, who was here this evening. Galen Houston, Bobby Goodrich is a harpist. Carla Hawksworth. Those are just some of the people over a rather short period of time that have had some things to do with the orchestra. The makeup of the orchestra does change considerably because it has some of the people that come every year, like Cora, who's here tonight, pretty stable and always here. But the youngsters in the orchestra, the high school students, that tends to change depending on how old they are. Freshmen, they seem to be very interested. Sophomores, they're very interested. Juniors, they're very interested. And usually when they're seniors, they got too much to do. Some of them. And so that changes from time to time. And then we have some people at the college that are in the orchestra, and they're here as long as they're in Baytown. The orchestra, I wanted to say a couple things to you about some low points and high points of the orchestra over a period of time. Some of the high points that I can remember are some of the soloists we had. Cora's been one of the soloists. Not necessarily, really big names, because the orchestra, from the standpoint of having to pay somebody a lot of money. They may be wonderful musicians, but they didn't cost too much. So we could hire them, and we would like to be able to hire some of the people that you were talking about earlier. However, probably not. But Albert Tipton, he's the flute teacher at Rice University. Albert is probably 75 now. He's a very famous flute player back probably 20 or 30 years ago as a soloist. Charlotte Tall is at Sam Houston State University. Beatrice Stanley used to be the principal violinist of the orchestra for several years. She lives in Texas City. Tom Stone and Lillian Spear one time played a duet with the orchestra. It was really real fine. And Tom has been featured several times. James Austin, the principal trumpet player of the Houston Symphony. Shirley Bird, who is a instructor and a pianist at that other junior college that's close to here. Leo Saki and Jeannie Bryant are French horn players who have soloed with the orchestra. Lawrence Wheeler is a violist who's an instructor at the University of Houston. The parties have been excellent. We usually have, we've had a tea over a period of years at someone's house. That seems to have faded now, and now we have this interfirst concert. We have a cabaret dinner kind of thing in March every year that is always a lot of fun. I can remember, though, a few low points. One time we got to the fourth concert of the year, and we needed $600 yet to be able to pay for that concert. And we didn't have $600. So Hazel Eccles, who was on the board then, said, well, why don't you just come down and borrow the money to the bank? So we thought, well, that's a good idea. We'll do that. So we all signed a note for $600, that's people on the board. And that was all well and good on the Monday night board meeting, but on Tuesday, half the board had dropped off the board because they were worried about that $600. That was a low point as conductor of the orchestra, I think. I can remember one time we were going to have the Kingston Trio here, and we didn't sell enough tickets, and we had to cancel the concert, unfortunately. But it appeared that we had a communication problem with the Kingston Trio, and we didn't cancel in time, so we didn't get any of our money back. I can remember that being a difficult thing. I can remember several times when we've had outside concerts that it's rained, and we've had to decide, well, do we move everything outside or not? And we look up, till about 4 o'clock in the afternoon and say, yeah, let's move it all outside. 30 minutes later, it's raining, Or we decide, no, let's just stay inside. The sun comes out. So those are sometimes the kind of things that we have problems with. It's been interesting to be the conductor of the Baytown Symphony for 18 years. It's fun to do. And there's a lot more to just the conducting part. Most conductors probably don't have the thrill of being able to move chairs before the concert starts, or even move them after the concert. You might think that a conductor would just come in and step up there, go at it. Probably that only happens to just a few people over the world. And there are lots of community orchestras in the world, and most of them are probably pretty much just like ours, in that we all have some part in doing a little bit of everything. Over a period of years ago, when we started this, just to say a little bit about the history part, on the first board that we had, which was in 1968, we organized, Sam Hastings, Hazel Eccles, Miss Lena Johnson, Dan McWilliams, and Lee Liggett were part of that first board that we had. I think Dan McWilliams, and I'm not sure whether it was Dan, Dr. McWilliams, who was at Lee College. Jim McWilliams. All right, okay. Was the first president, actually. And then Sam Hastings was the second president. But actually, it was through me speaking to Jim McWilliams that really got the orchestra started. He was very, very interested in having an orchestra through the school. school. The orchestra has done pretty much what it's supposed to do. It's offered free concerts to the public. It's involved college teachers, faculty at the college, youngsters, retired musicians, band directors. It's helped keep the community chorus moving from time to time. It's done pretty much what we want to from the standpoint of our purposes. Our needs are to have more people at the concerts, new ideas, new people, new blood would be very helpful. More people involved on the board when asked. Every year we have that come up. And primarily those are our two big needs. And I think I've probably taken all the time that we have left, so I appreciate it very much, and thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
I think we can see that the arts are alive and well in Baytown, which is nice to know. This is the time now, we have a little time left, and we'd like for some of you to come up and add any stories that we might have overlooked. Mr. Kelly, Secretary.
Did just a little personal reminiscence here. I live just across the street from the Baytown Little Theater. I know you too. But as you heard, Mr. Paul Holliday operated a grocery store and meat market in the building that we now use. One night, I was asleep, and at midnight, I suddenly was aware that lights were going around on the ceiling of the bedroom. And I got up, and here the fire department was outside because Mr. Paul had a fire in his meat locker. And so I hurriedly dressed, went out and helped hand meat out of the store. He got a flatbed truck and spread some butcher paper on it, and we loaded the truck with meat, which he took across town to some other commercial establishment. And the fire department, of course, showed up to put out the fire. Well, that was the end of the store. The building was vacant for some time, and then, as you heard, they borrowed chairs first, and then, as time went on, they got changes to the building, and they bought chairs of their own, and so on. I have